Alrighty, good afternoon traders, welcome back. Follow-up session here, little market snapshot. Just going to have a look at now the outcome of the BOE. So the interest rate decision is out as expected. It came in with that 25 basis point hike. Now things got a little bit interesting just ahead of it. We reached ourselves a point we rapidly saw what was being priced in. We saw a 70% chance of a 50 basis point hike, and at the point of data release there was actually 80% chance had been put forward for a 50 basis point hike. Now that of course not coming through. The initial reaction off the back of that ended up being quite dovish. If we just come across, we'll just have a look at the chart here. So I've got cable on the left hand side, euro sterling on the right hand side. We'll just focus in here on cable. I'm just going to drop this straight into a 1 minute chart so we can see the initial reaction. Now of course a dovish tilt here would have been weakness in sterling, and this is what we saw on the release. So immediately aggressive move lower. Now that reversed some of the moves that we had seen in the run up. So on the sort of about an hour prior to that, we actually saw some nice strong buying coming up through. So we're just seeing it here from these lows down here, 120.50 sort of a region. We saw a beautiful run up here to 121.80, so a nice impulsive move up, and that was as people started to price in that 70%, 80% chance of a 50 basis point hike. The data then came out, 25 basis point hike, seen as dovish in the end, not following in line with the Swiss National Bank and the Fed on the previous evening. So just the 25 basis point hike sent cable lower. Now since then, certainly here looking at cable, we've seen an excellent move down into the lows. So just focusing back in here, we can see these lows which were posted, still beautiful uptrend. 30-minute chart here, nice uptrend had been established. We had a run down into these lows, trading sort of just below 120.50. Aggressively moved back on that and started to turn more hawkish. And we've seen some follow through strength come through in sterling. Now that's partly off the back. There was 3 dissenters coming through. All 3 of those wanted a 50 basis point hike. So we saw the initial dovishness on, okay, we haven't got the 50 basis point, we're sticking with the 25 basis point, take us to 1.25%. Then we saw the rhetoric from the 3 dissenters coming through wanting the 50 basis point hike, which has turned us largely more hawkish. Now beautiful technical lows in play here. We've taken out now some of these previous highs, looking back from Monday and Tuesday, so kind of the highs of this week really, and that in turn has put this larger inverse head and shoulders in play. Now if that is to turn good, let's just have a look, slightly higher time frame. Let's just first and foremost acknowledge where that inverse head and shoulders is. We'll just put some lows, some circles here. So we've got a left shoulder coming through here. The head, of course, right the way at the bottom of the trend, and the right shoulder through here. Neckline for this is going to put us through these highs. Okay, so our neckline running through here. Should we see this unfold, we'd expect potential MPO of this, so the height of this price pattern to come through. So we'll just copy that across. And that is going to put us at a run up towards these highs. We've basically got 125 sits there as the round number. I think realistically we'll come up slightly shy of that, perhaps just looking towards some of these previous lows here. Not relevant for now, it's been broken, but certainly on the expectation perhaps we see this previous support turn and become resistance, and that's going to be trading just in around that 124.50, 125 sort of a region. So this inverse head and shoulders, now we have closed through it. Okay, it's an hourly price pattern, closed through it, still seeing some continuation, just on a bit of dissension, and the going in broadly really in line with the other central banks, looking at that more hawkish tone. We discussed earlier in the first session the rationale for why they might turn hawkish. Now we also had a look at euro sterling, and we had the price just drawn around this little range, and just looking at, we had 2 options really. We were looking, should we see these lows taken out, we could continue lower, or if we came up through the highs, we could perhaps see a reversal, depending on the hawkish and dovish tone. Now the dust has settled, we're seeing that sterling strength come through, and this market is slowly sort of grinding its way back low to this 85 region. The reality is, at the time of the data release and the aftermath that ensued, things got very, very choppy, very indecisive. Of course, we're seeing kind of an inverse scenario here of cable, where we're seeing the initial move was bullish here with sterling weakness, and now we've seen that turn around and moving back low. And I think this move lower now is more in line with perhaps the expectations. I think the initial move was more just on the basis, a bit of surprise that the 50 basis point didn't come out and they stuck with the 25. But now that the lasting sentiment here, I think, is more towards that 50 basis point hike, and certainly just looking at continued hikes going forward into the future. So not a huge amount else to come from this statement, really. Perhaps some positivity coming through here for sterling. We'll see if this follows through to the rest of the session, but some volatility nonetheless. There were, interestingly, opportunities to straddle this euro sterling. I'm just going to bring that up. Just have a look. Had you have taken an impartial view on this and just said, I'm not too interested which way this goes, I just want to try and capitalise on the volatility. And we did have opportunities here. We had a lovely little support level. And we had the highs. Now, when we look to straddle a piece of data, and we're looking back ideally at the last couple of hours really ahead. So this was a 12 o'clock release. So we're looking back to around 10 o'clock, something like that. Now, these highs through here are only looking back about an hour, back to around sort of 11 o'clock of these, 11:30, something like that, these highs and lows. But it was a beautiful, compact little range, which did give us the opportunity just to look for some shorter term targets, long up to these highs. Looking at the break on that release through here, or short down to the previous lows. We've already got this support level drawn in down here, 84.50, which we're potentially still on our way down to, had we have broken down through here. Now, of course, the long would have been triggered, short would have been cancelled, so long would have been a nice trade. Of course, the risk, this move was so fast, certainly on a spread bet account, very likely to experience some slippage, very unlikely to get the price which you were hoping for. So perhaps some concerns there with just simply the speed of this move. But sometimes just taking that impartial view, not trying to second guess, not trying to predict what's going to happen, and just relying on the fact that there will be volatility coming into the market and an increase in volume can be a very lucrative and successful way of trading this, and this certainly would have been the case today. Orders set long and short, above and below this little range. The long would have been triggered beautifully and targets hit. The short, had you kept it, you would still be in now, but I would imagine, having seen the initial move, orders out and just taking that single long position. So volatility once again generated by these central banks. Some trading opportunities, certainly not the cleanest of moves, unlike, of course, Euro Swiss this morning. Beautiful move there. Let's just have a quick look at that so we can just see the potential moves. Now, this was the shock announcement. Let's just remind ourselves on the economic calendar what that Euro Swiss data looked like. Here we are. So this Swiss rate decision, previous negative spot 7.5%, so negative rates. Shock announcement, expected to come in negative spot 7.5, came in with a 50 basis point raise. It's that shock that sends panic through a market, and it resulted in just a fantastic move in euro sterling. Just looking at it here, let's bring this up, 5-minute chart. What a beautiful move we saw here. Look at this aggressive strength coming into the Swiss franc. Of course, this was as hawkish as you could get. Not only was it a 50 basis point hike, but it was the shock element of it. Okay, we saw a 75 basis point hike with the Fed, but it was largely priced in. This is what can happen when markets are surprised and caught off guard. And I think the levels to be seeking were probably down to some of these lows down through here, easily reached. And ahead of that data release, we were just sort of stuck in and around this sort of region through here. We had multiple attempts of support, most recently this little test here, and then this test, and then straight through it, one to the other. And we're just seeing follow through in this now, and it's such a surprise figure. You'd expect that sentiment from the Swiss bank to follow through. Opportunities for shorts in Euro Swiss probably now looking really more at the lower time frames, at how can we try and capitalise on some of these potential retests. So you see this previous support becoming resistance and moving lower. I guess the next question really is where do we go next? Let's just pop this out onto a slightly higher time frame, onto an hourly, and just see where are the next lows to be looking to target. And I think we're looking down at this low here, perhaps, or right the way down to this 100 region, somewhere like that. So it's downside cup following through here, perhaps a little bit more continuation here, just coming through to the tail end of the European session. But BOE there, a bit of volatility, not so much the cleanest trading opportunities, but nice to see now that more hawkish tone filtering through to the close. Okay, so that's all from us today. Well done if you traded it. Well done if you trade this Swiss announcement. Hopefully it's a good insight at least into some of the volatility that can come around these interest rate decisions. Trading it, however, can be difficult. Okay, be careful out there. Be mindful. Enjoy the US session. We'll be back with you with another update further down the road.